Yes, Jets victory over the New England Patriots. I'm sorry for the audio quality. I had the microphone on the desk. I was watching the game after Aaron Rodgers found Garrett Wilson blanketed by Christian Gonzalez. Threw the hands up, the microphone went flying, and now she is absolutely dead. So I've got to figure out what we're going to do with this as we get through it. Whew, my goodness. I don't know what this feels like. I'm separating the fandom from the betting side for just a second. I don't remember the last time that a win has felt this good for the Jets. Last week, one of last season was amazing with the punt return, but that was kind of a different because that was marred by the injury and everything that came with it. But nevertheless, the Jets win. And look, my biggest takeaway from this game is something that I said in the preview on Wednesday, and I think it's now apparent for anybody who didn't see it, and that's the fact that Aaron Rodgers is back and looks like the Aaron Rodgers that we know. The biggest question in the offseason that everybody had about the Jets was, what will Aaron Rodgers look like? It was always the but. It was that sounds great. The roster's loaded. The defense is great. The offense is great. Yeah, but what about Rodgers? What about him at 40, right? And it's just, it hasn't looked like the doomsday scenarios that have been planned at the quarterback position. And tonight, quite frankly, we saw what it looks like when it goes right. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. And I think if this was the case, and we knew this now, if we go back just a couple of weeks, we're talking about this Jets team in a very different way. And I think that matters, and I think that that's important. Now, with all of that said, I think we saw a couple unique things here from the Jets tonight that make me wonder if it isn't sustainable. And I think that's the important thing. So I'm watching the game tonight, and going into it, my big key for the Jets was, how many times can you throw the football on first down? Because in weeks 1 and 2, we saw Nathaniel Hackett dial up run after run after run and just bashing into the offensive line for a yard and a half a carry. The Jets were dead last in yards before contact for all rushes from running backs. It was a problem because the offensive line was getting no push. There was no run game supporting it. And what we saw tonight against the Pats team is an advantage that was exploited by the Seahawks on Sunday. Seattle went into Foxborough with Geno and threw it 44 times and had a ton of success doing it. Tonight, if the Jets did not come out and pass aggressively on first down, they could have fell into similar traps like week 1 and week 2. We saw the complete opposite. They came out incredibly pass happy early in the game. And that, to me, is when the Jets are at their best. For the game as a whole, when you look at early down passes that were thrown, they had 43 plays that were early down passes, a 60% success rate on those throws. When defenses cannot sit on the run for the Jets, like they did in week 1, like they did in week 2, and you have Aaron Rodgers doing what he does best at the line of scrimmage with this quick passing game, spreading the football around, that can be a very dangerous Jets offense and a very tough team to defend. I sent a link in the group chat. Some of you guys will know it. There's an Instagram or TikTok, I don't know, it's everywhere, but it's Kickball Dad. And it's this older guy in a neighborhood that walks around with his daughter. He's got a Nerf football, and he stops and he's like, stop sign, boom, mailbox, boom. And he's throwing this Nerf football around the neighborhood and just picking out ridiculous targets. That's the Jets offense with Aaron Rodgers in the current form. You just have this elderly veteran behind an offensive line that's okay, and he's just picking off targets very quickly, doing it very accurately. And now you see the mobility that can help when it's needed. He was incredibly effective when he had to get outside of the pocket. So if you get a Jets offense that's aggressive throwing the football on early downs, that is allowing Rodgers to be comfortable and control things at the line of scrimmage, and you have a game where he's on like tonight, this is a good offense. And this is the team that we talked about all summer with the great roster and all the upgraded pieces and all the weapons that they've never had before with stable quarterback play that alleviates pressure on the defense. This is what it can look like. We have to be objective, though. When you look at this game and how the Jets operated on offense and chose to operate on offense, it was just glacial. I mean, you don't see offenses operate that slow by choice ever. There were no problems with the communication up front. It was very evident. Everyone was on the same page. You were seeing the checks. Everyone was in sync. The Jets chose to operate this slowly by choice. And we had a halftime interview. It was either before half, after half, whichever it was. I was too excited watching. Robert Salah came out and he's like, I really like the tempo that we were operating at. We saw Rodgers after the touchdown. There was the hug, no hug, push off type of thing. That was Robert Salah, who's always animated on the sidelines, getting fired up. And Rodgers is like, hold on a minute. It's still early. We got to take care of things. I'll be curious to see the comments post game. But my issue with this is we saw in the second half how Nathaniel Hackett, when kind of in control, can lull himself to sleep a little bit. Because the Jets offense in the first half looked very different from the Jets offense in the second half. And I'm not necessarily saying that the Jets offense in the second half was bad, but the Jets offense in the second half got very run heavy on early downs, and it became run, let Aaron figure out third down. If it's get aggressive early downs and then set yourself up in good spots late, that's great. When it gets run, let Aaron figure it out, that's a problem. And the Jets got away with it tonight in the second half. And I think we're made in the second half to look a little bit better than they actually are. And that's a bit of a worry for me going forward if they fall into that trap. Because when you're operating at that pace and you have something go wrong, not that the Pats were ever competitive, but I mean, the Jets were up 400 yards to the Pats at 105 before garbage time. That was still a 17-point game later into the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter. Like, when you're operating that slow, you're not pulling away from opponents. You're just relying on your defense to completely shut them down like tonight in order to win by margin. So it was a very fine line between the offense being ridiculously on tonight and then in that second half not letting that take over. One or two mistakes, that could be a very different game. And against better opponents, that can be a problem. So that is something that I'm a little bit worried about. It was great to see they got the game plan right early. Second half, we'll see if that's something that creeps up in future games. We'll get to talk about the Jets a lot on these reaction shows as they play in primetime a ton this season. So we'll certainly get to monitor and watch that and see how it unfolds as the year goes on. I want to talk about the defense quickly. Robert Salah in his tenure with the New York Jets has never had a game where the Jets blitz more than 25% of the snaps, bringing the extra rushers. Tonight was game number one. It tells me two things. One, they want it to be aggressive up front against the run. But two, they have to now manufacture pressure in this system. They lose Johnson, who was a 7.5 sack guy last year. They still don't have Reddick. Will McDonald looks amazing, but is still very young and carrying this pass rush by himself. What I see, and I get a little bit concerned with that, is it's such a big departure from how his defense typically operates. A lot of this could be Jeff Ulbrich, too, inputting with that. I don't know the divide and how that splits up. I liked the fact that they were doing that at key times. And I mean, almost every single blitz that they brought, they won. I worry a little bit about that again against better opponents, because it does put this defense in a much more vulnerable scenario that they typically do not find themselves in. And it's probably going to put a lot of stress on some of these DBs not named Sauce Gardner that typically isn't there because of how they want to play coverage. They got away with it tonight. It looked good. It worked. Let's see if it's something that continues as we go forward. So that is my take on the Jets. I really don't have a lot to say for the Pats. I don't know how much you want to react to this from the Pats side. This is a new staff going on the road on Thursday. Clev TA, have to shout him out, had a very good stat about teams that go to OT and then have to play on the Thursday nighter and how historically bad that has been. There's a lot working against the Pats tonight. There wasn't a lot of great matchups when you're really diving into it and looking at it. They really wanted to get going with the pass game. That's what they were hyping up all week. It didn't happen. Anyone with the Pop Douglas props over did very well. You benefited from that on the reception side. That was one that was hit by almost everybody, but it's just a Pats team that we saw in week one get whatever they wanted on the ground against that Bengals weak defensive front. In week two, they got Seattle coming in, talked about how good Seattle was offensively, but Seattle lost a couple linebackers. They couldn't defend Hunter Henry, but also the Pats got that consistent ground game. But the bigger thing is the Pats in week 1 and 2 were playing from a neutral or positive game state. Tonight, we saw what they look like when they're trailing and they have to go to the pass game. There's just not a lot there. There's not a lot of weapons. And this is what I think the Pats will look like when they're forced to play from behind. And that's kind of the round viewpoint that I have on both of these teams. I think it was more telling what we saw from the Jets than it was for the Pats as well. So I'll check up with the questions, and I will see. Hopefully everybody had a fantastic Thursday night. Hopefully everybody was on the Jets side, as we talked about from either our release, if you're a member of the service, or you followed some of the preview shows with some of the numbers that were still there. H-Train says, Rodgers looked great. I completely agree. The 20-year-olds got him playing 10 years younger. That's interesting with Allen in the backfield. You have that 20-year split between the two. It was good to see that he was running to his size, if you will. I think that was my takeaway for Allen. Week 1, maybe a little bit timid. Week 2-ish, putting that in there. But like tonight, we saw him. He's a huge guy when you see how things look in the huddle and coming out, and to see him truck a few guys at the line of scrimmage, get physical. There was that one play where he was hit 3 to 4 yards in the backfield. Still made it back to the line of scrimmage. And again, this was a Jets run performance that is going to look better than it was on paper. In reality, they had a few of those stuffs in the backfield that are still very concerning. Have to see what happens with Morgan Moses. They got Fashanu in there, the rookie. But that is a potentially a pretty important loss at right tackle, maybe lesser so because they finally have depth at the position. So that's something to look at and something to watch. Garrett, back for another live stream. Fantastic performance, but much like Brady in Tampa and Peyton in Denver, Rodgers has a complete team, and they're absolutely a title threat. We're back. There was 2 weeks of doubts for the Jets. We're back. And even in the comment section, when the comment section beefs up, that's a good spot to be in for sure. So it's good to see the comment section. Ryan says a lot more Braylon Allen usage than expected preseason, at least for me. Kind of just gave my thoughts on that. It's just a good change of pace. I don't know what happens when they get in these like known and obvious run spots, especially with Rodgers in the gun. I thought early Hall was next to him in the shotgun a few times, and those handoffs went nowhere. And it was like Hall was getting blown up 3-4 yards in the backfield. I'm not looking at Hall as like a downgrade in talent or something's wrong. It just seems like so often we see Hall just get blown up, and it happened last year too. It was happening really often, and then you have these big breakaway plays for Hall that end up working out very well. But I only felt like that happened once with Allen tonight, and there were a lot of runs for Allen with Rodgers under center. Then he had the head start, and they had the lead blocker in front as well, which was a good look. I think they're figuring that out. But yes, we certainly saw a lot of him, and maybe that's a sign to come to how the splits are going to be. Few more. I think, Garrett, you're agreeing with how I was talking about the Jets offensively and what that looks like. And Ryan Roberts says blitz rate decrease against an opponent with a more respectable passing game. I think that's absolutely right. I think you nailed that. And that's what we're going to see. And then the question becomes, can the front four that they typically rush with get pressure? In week 1 and 2, there was no pressure at all. So does that change? How much did the blitz help? All questions and things that I think we have to watch for, but that's certainly a takeaway that I have tonight. And Rudy says, I'll still take their secondary over anyone. This is the most positive Jets commentary we've had in months on the show here. This is great to see. Don't give them time. I think a blitz still holds up against better competition, more timely, but present. I think that is an interesting take that we'll have to see how they manage the blitz rate too. But this is something that looked different tonight. And we'll have to see some of the blitz success rate metrics when they come out. It seemed like every time they dialed it up, except for, I would say, I think it was Douglas down on the right side of the field. Brissett had a little bit of time, and Douglas was wide open on a post out to the right side of Brissett, going right to left on the TV. And he got time, and I mean, he was wide open, and that's an example of the bad side of it. But I'm curious to see, like, other than that, it just felt like every time they brought extra guys, they got home, and it mattered. Buzzer Beater says, bit of an echo. I got excited. I knocked the mic off the desk when they scored that touchdown, because I thought Gonzalez picked that off when he was going back 100 yards for the TD. Got excited, hands went up, and the mic is dead. So the sound probably is terrible, and it's going to be bad for the podcast too in the morning. So bear with me. I'll figure that out. Expensive little piece of equipment, but it was worth it for the Jets win, as well as the cover and the service win too. All right. Have a fantastic Thursday night, everybody. We'll chat back with you here on the YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the review and you're enjoying these, subscribe button down below. Hit the like button as well. We'll chat to you bright and early, 5 a.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. Pacific time, with the final Simple Handicap episode for week number 3 of the NFL season.